Good morning. We're so excited to have so many people here this morning with everything that's been going on around us outside. But let's kick this off. My name is Melissa Frederick. I am Assistant Business Analyst with the Georgia Transfer Team. And so if you're like me, we have flown a long ways to get here to hear these wonderful voices that have been come together. So we want to extend a thank you to our student advisory group that helped put this together. We have Brandy Stacy, Karen Hilker Balkason, hopefully I didn't slaughter that, Susie Morales, and Eric Beckstrom, who is here with us today with the students. So the purpose of this is to hear straight from the students, their experiences, their wisdom, any suggestions that they can give us, because it's, go straight to them to find out what we need to know. So we are excited to have them here. The primary goal of this panel is the student-centered accountability and actionable items. We want to make sure that you can actually take things home with you and put them into place. But at this time, I will turn it over to the students to introduce themselves. And a quick reminder, please silence your phones and et ceteras.
Hi everyone, early morning. I'm glad y'all made it. It was really hard for me to get up this morning. Anyways, my name is Atziri Regalado Juarez. My first institution I started at was Salt Lake Community College back in Utah. I'm from the Salt Lake area. My current institution is the University of Utah. Thank you. Yes, we have fans. My degree is honors psychology with a minor in nutrition. And one fun fact about me is that back home, I am a backup dancer for a local drag queen. Nice to meet y'all.
Hi everyone, my name is Jolynna Dang. Sorry. I studied at Golden West College before I transferred. Yeah. And I'm currently at the University of California, Irvine, studying business administration. I'm a third year and I did a 1-year transfer. So that was one thing unique about my experience. And I also have 6 siblings. So there's 7 of us total.
Hello everyone. My name is Juan Branco, but I go by also. I'm from the San Fernando Valley, from Los Angeles, California. My school of origin is Los Angeles Valley College. I am currently attending UC Santa Barbara now with a major in Chicano studies and a minor in applied psychology. And a little fun fact about myself, I am one of the goalies on the lacrosse team, and we're actually ranked 10th in the nation right now.
All right.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Armlin. I'm a senior at Union College in Schenectady, New York right now, but originally started off at Penn State University before going to Hudson Valley Community College, and then to Union, obviously. I'm studying biochemistry with minors in dance and psychology, and a fun fact about me is that in my free time, I'm an artist and run a small business.
Yes. All right, so I'm Eric Beckstrom. I'm from Indiana University, Bloomington, which is in Indiana. And I'm in the Center for Students in Transition, which is 2 people. All right, so I'm gonna just get right into this. Well, we have we have some prepared questions, but we really wanna get this out to you all, pretty quickly. So we'll have plenty of time for audience questions as well. So I'd like to begin by asking if you can just describe what your transfer process was like. Do we want to start on that end? I don't really care. I have no preference. Okay.
All right. So for me, it was very interesting. I think it started way before I even went to college. I think it started back in high school when I was I always knew I wanted to go to college. It was always not necessarily an expectation, but like a dream and an expectation. Just because from my mom's side of the family, everyone studied, but everyone lives in Mexico. So I was born in Mexico, but I was raised here. And so I always knew I wanted to go to college. And I believe it was around my junior and senior year that I started obviously applying and looking into it, right? I had never thought I was going to go to the community college, if I'm being completely honest. I was like, no, that's not going to be me. I'm going to go to a 4-year university. It's not going to be me, right? Then the pandemic hit. Yeah, I graduated 2020, so our graduation was not really a graduation. But the main reason I went to the community college was because of my immigration status. It was just the most accessible. We had the great resource of the Dream Center. And the University of Utah has it, but also Salt Lake Community College. And then also the community college is cheaper, right? So my parents were like, go to the community college, go to the community college. Again, I was really stubborn. I was like, no, I'm not going. I'm going to university. But at the end of the day, the best option for me was community college. Once I got there, like I said, it was during the pandemic. So that was a bit rough. My first semester was mostly hybrid, mostly online. Once I got to the second semester, that's when I started getting involved with extracurriculars, and that landed me the next year to be part of the student association. Once I was in the student association, that was very fundamental for my transfer journey, because a lot of those advisors were very personable, not just about me being in the position as a student leader, but more than anything as a person. They were always there for me. They were checking in. They were like, how are you doing? The particular advisor that like really helped me out, she wasn't even my direct advisor, but she was the one who was like, you need to start applying to transfer. And I was like, give me a minute. She's like, no. She literally sat me down, told me to take out the applications for the 4-year institutions, and was like, start applying now. Once again, like I mentioned, my immigration status takes a big role. It's a big identity factor, like we talked about yesterday in the keynote, or the day before, I don't remember. It's a big part of my identity. And so as I was filling out the applications for the 4-year institution, I had a breakdown. And I had a breakdown when I first applied to community college, because I realized that this dream of mine and this goal of mine that I've always had wasn't super accessible for someone like me. It was attainable, but it wasn't super accessible. I had a lot of barriers that I obviously have overcome and can still overcome, but it was huge for me. But it was those advisors that like stuck next to me and told me, it's gonna be okay, let's figure it out, let's figure out these resources, you can get there, it's possible, we'll figure it out with you. That really made my transition not necessarily smooth, because it wasn't. Transferring is hard, but it really helped me out. It was very fundamental for me.
So I, out of high school, had no intention of transferring originally, really didn't actually know anything about it. And I started off, my senior year of high school, decided to enroll at Penn State University. It was about 5.5 hours from home, really, really large university. Got there and very quickly realized it was not the right place for me at the time. And very quickly decided that I needed to come home and pursue other avenues. And so made the difficult decision to, leave within that semester and enroll at my local community college. And so I actually drove straight to the community college, and I walked in and I was like, okay, so you've probably never heard this story before, and they were like, no, we've heard this 1,000 times. And I laughed. My parents and I were like, oh, okay, we had never heard about this. So we're glad you have. And they were lovely. They enrolled me for classes the next day. They were amazing. And I spent the semester at Hudson Valley just continuing courses. I was a non-matriculated student, so I knew that I was still trying to find where my next spot would be. And so during that time, I was able to apply to local 4-year institutions. I kind of limited myself to a radius of commuting distance from home at that point, because that was what I needed at the time. And that's how I came across Union. And I spent the day there kind of going to classes, meeting with students. I met with admissions staff who were all really wonderful. And while I was still kind of uncertain about whether or not it was the right fit for me, I was scared of kind of making the wrong decision per se, which I now know like I couldn't have done. I had great decisions, great people in front of me, but they kind of showed me that there was a community there and there was a place that I could fit in. And so I chose to enroll at Union for that following trimester, because we're on a trimester schedule there. So I started in January of 2020, still during my first year of my college experience, I guess. So that's kind of how I ended up at Union. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Alrighty, so for me, I began my college experience in high school as well. I started off my senior year taking dual enrollment classes, as I learned about it during just like the little summer registration that we had. The community college was boothing there, and like they pulled me in with the business classes because I was like, oh, this seems really interesting. And that ended up helping me find my passion in business and ended up becoming a business major, because prior to that, I was honestly very lost on what I wanted to do. It was just nursing because that's what my parents told me to go pursue. But when college applications and college deadlines and acceptances came around later on that spring, I didn't get into my main school of choice, UCI. So at that point, I was pretty bummed out, and that's when I decided to go to community college. But even at this point, I think that I had a very high expectation from my parents, because they were like, why don't you just go to a Cal State, then like still go to university? Like, why are you going to community? But like, I knew myself that you would save so much money at a community. I had went to the high school outreach day at that community college and just learned about like the campus, like the student government that they had, the support system that they had at Golden West. And it was appealing to me. Like, I wanted to go there, and that's why I kind of stuck to it. So I started off at community, and even then I still felt some type of, I guess, like need to fulfill my parents' expectations. So that's why I pushed myself to do a 1-year transfer. I took 22 units at the community college my fall semester and actually got a 4.0, which was crazy because I can't even do that now. Yeah, but yeah, I took a lot of classes both semesters during the winter intersession, and I really pushed myself to get involved in student government. I had things to write about in my PIQs, and then I was able to transfer successfully and got into my school. And although it was really stressful, since it wasn't a transfer guaranteed admission, since it was a 1-year transfer, I was still like very happy that I was able to put in like my best work forth. And it was really tiring, but I would say it was like pretty worth it overall.
Well, my story is a little bit different than my scholars here. I took a completely different route. Higher education was never in my sights. Right after, first of all, I wear a lot of labels. I'm a former foster youth, so that kind of impacted me as well into a lot of just the stuff that I was getting into in life and stuff like that. I just wasn't heading in the right path at that certain time. As you can see, I stick out like a sore thumb. You know, I have tattoos and stuff like that, and it's just the way I always express myself and stuff like that. And it's just certain things in life that were taking me in a certain path. And I am formerly incarcerated. So when Dr. Toulouse was presenting the other day, it resonated with me because I've always distinguished those two identities completely apart from each other. I never thought I was like, oh, I'm a transfer and formerly incarcerated. I'm like, I'm within one itself. So I always say, okay, that's that, and that's this. And so it just, you know, I got tired of risking my freedom. I got tired of doing this. I got tired of just seeing my friends and loved ones pass away due to gang violence, due to all this stuff that I couldn't get out of, because that's all I knew. You know, that's all I knew. I fell into those footsteps, and I became another statistic, and that's what I didn't want to become. And I looked at myself, and then I was like, I need to do something to change my life now. It's either now or never. And I don't know what it was, and I was riding a bus, and I saw a community college poster, and I was like, school, I don't know what it is, but I've always been like a 1.02, 1.3 GPA. I've never had it, I was a DNF student my whole time, and I started to travel 3 hours just to that community college, and I was like, hey, I'm taking 2 courses, I'm going to school, yeah, and I went for a little bit, and then I was like, it's taking me too long to get this, but I still want to go to higher education. How am I going to do that? And I saw one that was about an hour away. I'm like, okay, I can commute a lot faster to there, and I stayed there about 4 years because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just taking courses. I was like, yeah, 2.5 years. I'm like, yep, I'm in college. I'm doing something. At least I'm not in jail. That's what I kept thinking. At least I'm not in jail. And my freedom was the thing that I just kept, worrying about. So I was like, and then next, being a foster youth, and I couldn't get a lot of my paperwork and stuff like that. So that was a huge barrier for me, to the point that I couldn't even enroll in the first place. So I was just going to different, because the community college I was trying to transfer into, which was Los Angeles Valley College, they were asking me for all these extra paperwork that the first community college wasn't asking for. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't go through all these hoops and stuff like that to just even enroll. So I was ready to just quit. I was ready. I'm walking out and stuff like that. And they made me meet with this one individual. And sooner or later, she was like, let's meet with you. And I met with her for about 30 minutes. Next thing you know, I was walking out, and she gave me a call. She was like, I'm not gonna let you leave. We're gonna somehow get that paperwork to enroll you into this community college. And I was like, okay, cool. So I turned around at that moment when she called me and I turned around, I was like, what am I even doing here? Like, I have no purpose here. This is not built for me. Because all I saw was white people. And I'm like, this is not for me. Like, this is not for me at all. This wasn't made for me. And it just, that, the racist ideology of imposter syndrome hit me hard. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just kept chugging along to the point that, next thing you know, it was 2.5 years. I was, almost in my 3rd year, and some, individuals started catching on to me. They're like, you've been here quite a little bit, so what's going on with what's your situation? And next thing you know, I was like, they started throwing these words of transfer and stuff like that. I was like, what is this transfer? To the point I had to go back and look it up, because I was like, what is this transfer thing that they're talking about? And so next thing you know, that's when, little bit by little, I'll go into that a little bit later on with the application stuff like that. But next thing you know, like, they just kept encouraging me to kind of see that and put that into my sights of transfer and stuff like that. But it was never in my sight in the beginning.
Wow. So I'm seeing a number of themes popping up here. One is pathways and barriers, right? And another is the individuality of each of these individuals. And nobody really needs to be reminded of this, but it's still worth saying over and over again that each of these transfer students is an individual, 4-dimensional human being. You all have either directly referenced or alluded to kind of the emotional and mental, psychological part of your transfer process. So to the extent that you're comfortable, could each of you take a couple of minutes to expand on that a little bit, and maybe we'll start. Yeah, thank you.
Wait, repeat the question, please.
Oh, sure. So could you describe the mental and emotional aspects of your transfer before, during, and or after? What was your state of mind? How did you feel? And again, only to the extent that you're comfortable doing that.
I think, especially as a psychology major, right? This is huge. This is huge. And there is for sure a lot of mental and psychological things that go into transferring. Like I said, for me, even the application process at the beginning during the pandemic, when school was out, because of the pandemic, that took, mental toll. Now trying to register into college because that was another thing. Like, since I graduated 2020 and after March, like, everything went online. We didn't have we had the college recruitment, I think. Like, we didn't have that when, like, our counselors would call us in and help us fill out the applications. Like, we had to figure it out on our own in our house. So that was scary. Like I said, I knew that it was possible to go to college with my immigration status. I knew it was possible, but when I started applying to the community college and I got accepted as an international student, I was like, wait a minute, no, this is wrong, something's wrong. But then I turned it back to me. I was like, is something wrong with me? Like I said, I did have a mental breakdown. I had a mental breakdown. My parents were trying to comfort me. My friends were trying to comfort me. And I was like, but this isn't right. Like, I know it's possible. After I got over that, that's when I called the community college and I was like, hey, this is my situation. They directed me to the Dream Center. And actually, exactly a week from yesterday, I gave a speech at the Dream Center open house because we expanded our Dream Center at the community college. And so they invited me back as a guest speaker to talk about my success story at the community college. So that was really fulfilling because they really gave a lot to me and I want to give a lot back. But yeah, with that being said, they were instrumental in me going to college in the first place, right? That was one barrier, like I said, that I had, and mentally took a toll on me. But once I got over it, like I said, I was quick to connect as soon as everything opened up, and I had a blast at community college. It was the best thing ever. Since I had a blast at the community college, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave. When my advisor was like, please start applying, I was like, no, look, we still have events coming up. Part of the student association. I have a lot to do here. Yeah, and yeah, my advisor was like, no, you need to transfer. So like I said, when the time to apply again came, I opened up the application and I was filling it out in front of her, and then that one question popped up, right? And I sat back in my chair and I was like, oh, I stared at it. It just hit me again. And I was like, I know, I just have to fill out the form again, because in Utah we have what we call the HB 144. That one is if you went to high school for 3 years and graduated from a Utah high school, you have residency at any institution there, or resident tuition. Yeah. So like I said, I stared at the screen and I was like, I know, I just have to fill out the form. But it hit me again. I was like, here we go again. Kind of like what also touched on about, especially being part of the student association, institutions were created. It's a systematic thing, right? And obviously, just seeing the diversity in this room, it makes me happy, because these systems we are unfolding and we're molding it into like what we need now. But it's very much old school still to some extent, and the culture shock is still there. And it still takes a toll, because I had that same thought also of like, this is not for me. Like, the system was not created for me. But my presence being here means that I am meant to be here, and the system has to change. Thank you. Yeah. So that was a lot of the mental aspect of getting into the college. When it came to transferring to the University of Utah, though, I had a huge culture shock the whole first semester, which was my last semester, the fall semester. That's when I first transferred. I had a huge culture shock. Like I said, I knew that the University of Utah had the first Dream Center in the state of Utah. I knew there was a community. A lot of my advisors from the community college went to the University of Utah and connected me directly to a lot of resources and a lot of programs. But once I got there, I also stuck out like a sore thumb in class. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like super like self-conscious. I was like, how did I go from being this like confident student at the community college to all of a sudden feeling like super, super tiny in the college classroom? Like, what is going on, right? Like I said, that took a huge mental toll as well. And I started going to, I always went to counseling, especially since our tuition pays for that at our institution, the counseling center and therapy. And so I went at the community college, and I went at the University of Utah. And the great thing about our current institution is that we have 2 designated therapists who are people of color, and they're implanted into our multicultural center and also at the counseling center. So students know that there's someone, if they need, that looks like them and can listen to them and can speak to their background of, it's different. It's different, especially that like familial expectations, cultural expectations, they take a huge toll on you. It plays into who you are, right? Back to the identity lenses, right? Like, we have an identity, and that obviously impacts how we behave and how we think about ourselves and how we think about the world outside of ourselves, right? So I think being outside of your culture is something very beautiful. You get to learn, but there's something so rewarding of like owning who you are. And that really impacts your mental health. And if we have people in our institutions that look like us, that can speak to our experiences, it really, really empowers us.
Thank you.
So I have a very different story, and I first just want to say I know Atziri and Jolynna both transferred very, very recently, and so proud of you both for sharing your experiences now, because I will start by saying it was a tough subject for me at first. I think because I just didn't see much representation. I didn't know that all that transfer really could be, and I had a very different view about the word transfer than I do now. And so when I originally left high school and decided to go to a large university, I had no fears, which I think is part of the problem, actually. I had no fears going in, and up until move-in day, really was not scared of anything. I was like, I'm ready for this, absolutely no problem. And I moved in and was very excited, met my roommate, had no problems. I spent the first night there and woke up very bright early in the morning and immediately was like, what did I just do? And I think nobody had told me about how tough college can be originally when you get there, especially if you're moving so far to a place where you don't know anybody. And my parents were like, oh, this is normal. We hear about this all the time. I'm the oldest. I should start by saying that. They've never done this before. So they were like, this is normal. It's totally fine. I was like, yeah, okay. So they, drove home and started taking classes. And I thought, okay, well, the thing that feels very normal to me and feels very at home to me is class. And so when I get to class, I'll feel comfortable again. And so I started going to class and realized I was now in a room of 300 people that I did not know, very, very far from home. And I felt like I had no way of leaving, and that wasn't true, but it was really hard for me at the time. And so after a ton of conversations and a lot of thought, I decided this was not right for me at the time. I needed more support. I needed more support at home, and I needed to be somewhere that was a little bit more familiar and maybe a smaller community that I was used to. And so I made the difficult decision to pack up my things and leave just after starting there. And that was really hard for me, and it was really hard for my parents, because we had not really seen much of what transfer experiences really looked like. We honestly didn't know anybody who had transferred schools. We didn't know anybody who had left before the semester ended, for sure. And we really just didn't know anything about it. We hadn't seen representation. And so I personally had kind of seen it. I'd only heard as like transferring being like your plan B, or when your first plan fails, or where your first school fails. And I know now that that's not the case at all. It was exactly the path that I needed to take to be where I am today. But drove home, and as I said, went directly to the community college. We called them while we were driving home from Pennsylvania. And they're like, yeah, our registration office is open for a few more hours. Come stop by. And so we stopped by, and I was hesitant to tell this woman in front of me that I had just packed up all my stuff after only being there for a couple days. And she was lovely. She was like, we hear this way more than you think. Don't worry. And they actually have a late start program. I didn't need to use it because the schools actually had started a few weeks apart from each other. But she was like, we actually have a late start program for students who move away from home and realize it's just not the right place. It's not the right time. And so it was awesome to hear, okay, people have done this before, not the only one. But I didn't fully believe it yet. I don't think my parents fully believed it yet either. And so I spent the semester there, and it was really hard because I had to go from going to a school where I didn't know anybody, I was the only one going from my high school, to going to the community college that half my high school went to. And now running into all these people who were like, oh, I thought you went to Pennsylvania. I was like, yeah, I did, but now I'm here and not really sure where I'm going next. And so that was tough. And I was kind of afraid to talk about the fact that I was pursuing other avenues. And I was very lucky to have someone who was in my life and was like, look, I know that you wouldn't make a decision that's wrong for yourself, and I'm proud of you for pursuing what you know is right for you at this time. And so I was very, very lucky to have her. She was kind of walking me through this whole process of transferring schools can be a good thing. And I didn't fully buy into it at the time. But I finally came across Union, and I had a really awesome visit day there. But I still didn't leave there being like, oh, this is my place. And I know a lot of people talk about having this feeling of oh, I stepped foot on campus and I knew it was right. And I didn't have that. And so that's where I was a little hesitant, because I don't think I had heard much. People don't talk much about when things are tough, when things don't go as they planned. And so I thought about it for a long, long time about where I wanted to end up. And it came to the deposit day, the day I needed to tell Union yes. And I had a class that I needed to get to at Hudson Valley, in an hour. The deposit was due that night. The class was 6 to 9. I was a mess. I was sitting in my room with my parents, and they were like, you have to just pay the deposit. Like, this is right. And my high school counselor, who was the one who actually had, like, told me she was really proud of the decision that I was making, she had talked with me about my visit day with them, and she was like, they sound really wonderful. They sound like they're really a great community. And like the choir professor had like pulled me in and was like, I'd love to have you join the choir. I'd love to get you involved in this and that. I know you're interested in studying science, but like, here's how you can do both here. And she was like, I feel like they would be really great for you. And so that was kind of running in the back of my mind, but I was like, I don't know, maybe another school closer to home is a little bit better. I'm not really sure. And my mom was sitting there at the table very frustrated because she was like, please just choose a school already. And finally, I was like, I need to leave for class. I'm going to be late to chem. Like, I don't know what to do. And I'm very punctual on time. So, of course, they were like, please just do something and go to class. And I remember sitting there and they pressed the deposit button. And I'm so, so glad they did. They just clicked it and they were like, you're going. And you know what? If this one isn't where you want to be, that's totally fine. And we'll find the next path. And so the before and during transfer I see as the same thing because I didn't know anything about it. I was kind of learning about the process while I was doing it, and that's kind of where we ended up. So then I started hearing from people at Union, and I remember they're very good about reaching out to you personally when you first choose to go. And I had heard individually from the Dean of Studies, my class dean, my academic advisor, the director of the music department, and a transfer student who personally called me. And I remember being so overwhelmed because I was like, all this attention is on me. I don't want anybody to know that I'm a transfer student just because I simply didn't know anything about it. And I was so overwhelmed, but really it was the greatest thing ever. I'm so, so thankful that they did. And I started there, again, the winter of my freshman year. And I walked into class and I thought, everyone is gonna know that I'm new here. That was totally not the case. They were all still meeting everybody. And I still remember my first day there, just not being ready to tell people that I was a transfer student because I just didn't know that it could be a wonderful thing. And sat down at a table in lab. I got paired with this girl who is actually currently one of my best friends today. Actually, 3 of the people at the table, they are my best friends. And we sat down. The professor was like, all right, turn to the person next to you, introduce yourselves. And I was like, they all know each other. They didn't. And this girl, Morgan, looked at me and she was like, hey, where are you from? What are you studying? And then immediately by the end of the lab, she was like, we're gonna be friends now. And we looked at the 2 people across from us, Luke and Isabel, and they are still, to this day, my closest friends at Union, and I met them day 1. And as I kind of went across this process of realizing how wonderful these people were, when I started to share that I was a transfer student and saw that they were excited about it and that they thought, wow, you have really, really unique perspectives to bring and you have unique experiences to share, I started to be like, okay, maybe this isn't such a bad thing.
So one thing that I think each of you in some respect has sort of alluded to, and you're saying right now, is hang a lantern on it. If
Absolutely.
you know, if you can tell your instructors. So this might be a piece of advice that this is going to be a segue to a couple of brief questions, and then we want to get it to the audience. I would imagine that one of your pieces of advice would be to suggest that transfer students go out of their way to tell people I'm a transfer student, introduce themselves to their instructors as a transfer student, and I want to get back to some advice that you might give, but I'm curious about. I have a yes or no question for you. So 2 or 3 of you have mentioned. And the importance of having a point person, a one person you can go to at your school, and sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. Do you know if there are culture centers at your current school? And during the transfer process, yes or no question, did anyone tell you that? Atziri?
Yes, actually it is because of these centers and these programs that I got connected to the University of Utah. Like I said, my previous advisors at the Salt Lake Community College went to the University of Utah. And before I transfer, like I said, she wasn't my direct advisor, but I call her my mentor, right? Her name is Christina Saruknara. She couldn't come to the conference, but she was my guest. She, like I said, she was a student She also had her own path, unique path when it came to college and whatnot. She was the one who connected me to the first gen scholars, because I'm also a first generation student. She connected me to the first gen scholars, to the Dream Center, to the Multicultural Center. I believe those are it. But yes, the Multicultural Center, actually, we have a person of contact. Her name's Martha Hernandez, and she also has a transfer programs for BIPOC folks. And I actually heard about her. I had met her before I transferred, but it wasn't until a couple weeks into the semester at the University of Utah that I got reconnected, and she was like, hey, like I have this program for transfer students. And I was like, oh, I totally spaced this. Yes, I want to join ASAP. And it is because of her that I met Paul, our transfer director, coordinator, program manager. Yeah. And I found out last week, actually, at the speech I gave, that he actually advised both Martha and Christina, who were both transfer students as well. So Paul knows everyone, and I didn't even know Paul. So this was...
So again, forming these contacts.
Yeah, it is through these connections that you get to know.
Also, and excuse me, I have a cough going on here. And Jolynna, were there culture centers where you made aware of it?
Yes. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Good.
it was
Good.
just,
Good.
And I guess just to name drop, and I guess just most people know her, it was through Jewel Bourne. So Jewel Bourne, a lot of people know her. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And then for me, I would say I honestly was not that exposed to any cultural centers or like anything at UCI when I first got there. I think that maybe it's because like you're at a new campus, like even though you're getting a lot of emails, like I'm sure that some of them had some resources in there. I feel like I was still just trying to acclimate to the school environment. But the continuous need, I feel like if someone were to reach out to me a little bit more, just like past the first month of school, I might have reciprocated then, because my first quarter at UCI was really lonely. It was really hard to make new friends. It was really hard to form connections. And just like that little bit, like a little bit more would have been nice to make me feel a little bit more supported.
You know, loneliness was actually something that came up consistently in the virtual version of this panel, and so again, making these connections. I'm gonna, as long as you have the mic, let's have each of you very quickly, before we get it to the audience, two things that you would tell, two pieces of advice that you would give people before or during or after their transfer, just like the two most important sort of one sentence pieces of advice that you would give if you had to boil it down.
I would say to not let the people around you dictate how you feel about the experience, because my experience, I would feel, is very heavily set around like my parents' expectations and what they wanted from me. So the entire time I was honestly just doing it to make them proud so that I wouldn't let them down. And even now I feel like I am looked down upon because I went to community college, and that whenever I like open that pathway up to my siblings, my younger siblings who are now in high school, they'll kind of say like, yeah, like don't tell them to go to community college like you did. And then I'm just like, it's really not that bad of a thing. And I wish that they were able to understand that, because like now I am really proud of being a transfer student, and like I loved my whole experience, and I think that they have so much to benefit from it, and I really want them to be able to see and understand that. And I love my parents, I really do, and I think that it's just because they were immigrants over here to America that they had to endure so much hardships just to get us to where we are today, and they want us to make the most out of that sacrifice. But I just really wish that, like, I guess people in the Vietnamese community or the Asian community with like those high expectations, for them to understand, because it's not just like in the students and what they believe, like the people around them really play an effect into how they're able to exude themselves as well.
Oso?
Sorry. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. Yeah, the question is basically if you had one or two very specific pieces of advice that you would give other transfer students before, during, after, you know, the transfer, what would you boil that down to?
I would say just advocate for yourself. You know yourself better than anyone else does, and you know the resources that you need to be successful and to reach the goals that you're trying to set for yourself and you're setting for yourself. So I had to learn that, and then just advocating for myself. And then another thing is just enjoy the process of it. That's one thing that I just didn't do, and I just was going through it and stuff like that, to the point that once even I got to my UC, I haven't been able to truly enjoy the whole time and be a student and stuff like that. So just enjoy the whole time that you're there and just advocate for yourself.
Emily?
I would say for students, once you get to your new institution, try things. Don't be afraid to say yes, because you might find the greatest things ever. And then 2 is just embrace your unique experience. It can turn out to be the greatest thing ever. Don't be afraid to share it and rely on your support network.
This kind of touches back on like the previous question. I guess one advice for the professionals, since y'all are professionals, is that keep in mind that the students, once we get to college, our first priority is class. Like, that's all we can think of. We're like, oh, we're in school, class, right? If you really want to reach out to us, get in front of us and be like, hey, this is a resource, we can help you. Because students literally do not know that. They don't know. And especially if you're a first generation, you don't know that a resource exists in the institution and that it's accessible to us through our tuition. So get in front of them. And as a student, it would be meeting y'all halfway there, reaching out to these resources, because it is through the resources that you make your journey and your time there memorable.
Yeah, and I would think that being able to advocate for yourself also is a lot easier if there are other people, like the people in this room, advocating for you, and people who are maybe a little more reserved or a little more introverted may have more difficulty advocating for themselves. So there must have been I know we can tell from your stories that there are times when people on this end met you 90% of the way there, so that you could eventually begin to meet people halfway or 90% there yourselves. Okay, so let's get it out to the audience.
This is a question for Oso. First, thank you for sharing your story. It was very moving and inspiring, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people in this room can resonate to your journey. One of the questions I want to ask, because you talked about, like, you knew that there were resources, but for your particular circumstance, what resources were they able to provide you to help you acclimate to, being in this new space, being in the university as a non-traditional, and I know we're getting away from that non-traditional word. I was here the other day when we talked about it. But just coming from, like, a unique circumstance, what resources were they able to provide you so that you can actually have that sense of belonging and get to that space where you knew that you were where you were supposed to be all along?
Yeah, a great question. Like I said, like I mentioned earlier, I've always distinguished them from each other. I've always said, I'm non-trad here. I'm a Guardian Scholar here. I'm this here. I'm a transfer student here. So I've always been separate. I've never thought like that's my whole as one identity. So when I first got there, like you mentioned, Eric, like they were meeting me 99% of the time, and I still wasn't accepted. I'm like, who are these people and stuff like that. And another thing is just I resonated with one of my identities so heavily, which was being formerly incarcerated, and there was nothing there. So as a student, as an activist myself, I had to go and create that chapter on my campus.
And that's how you do it, brother.
So just that one in itself and stuff like that, it just, it states it's, where some of these institutions are at, and some of these programs should have been established 30, 40 years ago instead of barely now. And, it's better now than never, but it's very vital to understand that every individual goes through many experiences and they have a lot of identities and stuff like that, so that they need to deal with and stuff like that. And a lot of these programs need to collaborate with one another to understand that, it's just not transfer students. It's like they wear a lot of labels at the same time. So it's just, yes, some of the institutions, they don't have it, and we have to create it ourselves, just student-led.
Thank you.
Is that Underground Scholars? Is that the Underground Scholars program?
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Let people know what it is.
Yeah, of course. The Underground Scholars is usually just in California. It's a UC statewide chapter. It started off at UC Berkeley, just through student-led, just formerly incarcerated individuals, and little by little, every few years or so, a chapter has popped up at all 9 UCs now. I was one of the co-founders with two of my other scholars and stuff like that. And so it was, thank you. I try not to speak too much about it because I don't know. It's just what I do. That's part of my stuff. So, thank you. So yes, it just got established on June 1st, 2021. So it took me a few years right away. I just saw these individuals going, and I just started. I'm like, this is part of me and stuff like that. So this underground scholars is student-led, it's student-driven, and just to provide formerly incarcerated student system impacted individuals the resources and just the support to acclimate into the UC rigorous academia, and just to provide some support and resources, because it's very few of us, not many of us that walk around these campuses. It's about maybe 6 of us that walk this campus, and not many of them look like me. So I'm the one that just sticks out like a sore thumb and stuff like that, and I love it. So it just, yeah.
You are the best advocate for that program. Yeah.
I have a question. Hi. So my question is also for Oso, and I'm gonna butcher names. I'm so bad with names. So sorry. And Atziri. Atziri. Okay, I have a speech impediment, my bad. So I guess my questions for both of you guys are like, what are you plans for after graduation, right? We talk about the transfer process, we talk about what we're doing currently, but I feel like your voices are very loud and like open. So I'm just curious to see, especially for your own communities, what are you guys thinking about doing after graduation?
Oh, yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. It's something, I just been doing since I got there to UC Santa Barbara. I didn't know what my purpose was, and I ended up finding it through the work that I do, through the activism that I do, and I just hope to continue working with diversion programs, helping individuals that have been through the path that I went through. So basically, I've been at the end of the road. I've been at the end of the box, locked up, and just I don't want anybody else to go and experience that. So if I can prevent a youth that, I promise you to say, like, here's the end of the road, here's all the other options that you have. And, if I can prevent you from going through that path and go through a different path of higher education, I've done my job. I've done what I was made to do and stuff like that, and give back to the community and stuff like that. And that's the only way I can think of being a productive member of society, is to prevent a youth to go through the same path that I went through, because I never had anybody. Like I said, my mom passed away at a very young age. My dad, I never met him, so that's why I was in the foster system, and I never had that individual to tell me, hey, don't be the F up, get your shit straight and stuff like that. I never had anybody like that. So if I can be that, just that support for that one youth, I've done my job. Like, I've done my purpose.
That's a good question. Like I mentioned previously, I just transferred to the University of Utah, so this is my second semester at the U. I do think me choosing my majors of psychology and nutrition, the reason being was because I want to combine them and I want to help folks who are dealing with eating disorders. That was the initial plan, but my journey still continues now, right? I'm still on that journey. And this semester, in fact, I took less credits because last semester was really rough. It was my first semester. And then since I was really involved in the community college, I went to the university and I packed everything on and I put too much on my plate. That was rough, and my health took a toll. Literally the 2 weeks of finals, I was sick in bed at home. I couldn't get out of bed. So that had a lot of consequences that I'm recovering from. And I realized I was like, maybe, yes, I want to do school. I don't want to stop doing school, but let's take it down a little bit to the point where it's still enjoyable, that I don't burn out and I make it to the end and not just like get stuck in the middle, right? With that being said, this semester, since I took less credits, like I said, there's a lot of opportunities that have opened up career-wise with advocacy. And so I was thinking about that. And last semester, I met with a grad student in the psychology major that was like, why don't you do, it was something about like policy and advocacy. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, I don't know, but a friend of mine is doing it. And it's a thing. And she's like, with everything that you're involved, that you're telling me, She's like, it seems like something you should do. So I talked to my academic advisor, and she said there's a certificate. So I don't have a clear answer. I have a potential answer of helping folks with eating disorders. But I do think that if I'm redirected within in the future, I am open to new opportunities. So I'm excited for that.
And it is perfectly okay that you are not 196% sure what's happening next. All right, who's next?
I've been waiting for this moment. Hey, you all. Yesterday we had a great conversation, and I just want to say thank you all because it's a pleasure to hear your stories, and I resonate a lot with those stories. So today is February 23rd, and you're sitting in front of hundreds of people, right? 5 years ago, never knew this moment was going to be here. Never knew what you were going to do, but you're here now. So if you could take yourself 5 years back, what's one thing you would tell yourself to make sure that you're resilient, to stay the course to get to this point?
Yeah, great question.
Okay. I think, so 5 years ago today, I was a junior in high school. I had no idea what was ahead of me. I think I would tell myself that just follow the path, and if you take some different turns than you expected, that's okay. And that everything would work out exactly the way that it needs to, and to just rely on my own support network and rely on the people around me to end up exactly where I need to be.
Jolynna?
I would say 5 years ago, I was a sophomore in high school. So I would definitely say just to believe in yourself more and to not let other people put you down, because you can be confident in yourself, you know your own self-worth, and you know that you will get there in the end, and that you can do it.
Also?
Yeah, we had a conversation yesterday. So, like I said, I had a different path, and I actually did that. So I was incarcerated at the time, and during that time, I was like, this is not what I wanted to do. So if I were to go back and tell myself something, I would tell myself to just accept the help that's there. Accept it, because I was just so headstrong to the point my ego got in the way. I'm like, I don't need anybody. I was just been myself, because I was either took care of everybody else, and that's the way I've done it. So I'm like, I don't need anybody. I can just do it myself. So if I were to go back, I'm just telling her, just don't be a fool. Accept the help that is there, because they're there to support me, and I just didn't know that. I was naive about that.
Excellent. Atziri?
So I actually was thinking about your question right as I was dozing off last night, because I took it very seriously. 5 years ago, I was 15. I was planning my quinceañera, actually. And that little girl has no idea what she went through or how far she's come or where she was going to end up. And I think if I were to go back, I would also touch on what Jolynna said. I would tell her, be confident in yourself. There's so much in you that you are resistant, you are resilient, you have so much to give, and yet you also have so much to embrace. Because she didn't believe in herself. She really didn't. And it took years. It took a lot of heartbreak, per se, a lot of barriers in her face to realize that, there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there. And I feel like I'm not fully developed, fully transformed. I believe in the symbolism of the butterfly. As a immigrant, we have the butterfly, right? You do go from being a caterpillar to a butterfly. And so we're always evolving. And I just wish she would have embraced it from the beginning.
And the pain, the uncertainty before you knew you were resilient, all of that is why you're sitting here, right? So there are a lot of life lessons for all of us. Who's next?
Hi, sorry, I'm in the back of the room.
Okay.
So Emily, you spoke to seeing transfer as negatively connotated at first. So how, as professionals, can we help foster an environment where transfer is a positive connotated word and environment for students to be in?
Yeah, I love that question. I think I mean, it starts with representation. So highlight your students that are transferring. And when they do come in, or if they're leaving your institution, I think, just making it very open and honest that this is an awesome opportunity. You can end up great places. So I would say just support them. Don't be afraid to share their stories. And the biggest thing for me was connections. If I would have seen somebody around my age who had done this and who had succeeded and who ended up very happy in the long run, I would have loved to see that. So if someone in my prior institution, my current institution, would have been able to connect me with someone who went through a similar path, that would have been awesome. And my last thing would just be to, I think, especially for the staff members in the room, if you're teaching a class, be careful about the way you're wording things for orientation too. I know a lot of times it's first year orientation, or we know for first years, first year classes, there's a lot of introductions about how things start. But for transfers, new student orientation is so inclusive, and transfers hear it and they resonate with that. And for professors who might be in the room as well, if you're teaching a class that's an upper class, don't assume that everybody in that room knows that institution yet, because we totally understand that you're coming from a place of just you think everybody in the room knows, and that's totally understandable. But for the students in the room that may have just transferred who might not be as open to say it yet, it's so incredible to hear a professor be like, oh, for anybody who might not know, this is our managed learning system, and here's how we do things. I hope that helps answer your question.
So go across bridges, but then be the bridge.
Yes, but yeah. Yes.
I want to add to that. I think also as professionals, if y'all are transfer students yourselves, or you guys were former transfer students, please highlight that, because it's not until last week that I learned that my mentors were transfer students themselves. And like I said, representation is huge. So even if you're faculty, staff, et cetera, I feel like overall, if people talked about it more and were like, hey, I'm a transfer student, I went here and there, and it's a good thing because I got different perspectives, then people would not have that negative connotation.
Just to briefly add to that, just because I see her right here and stuff like that, so just one of my great advices, Malapon, just give back to the students, highlight them, spotlight them. When I go into our office, it just, the space that it's been there for the owners, and I see our faces there. I see people that look like me, that I am proud to go in. I'm like, yeah, this is a study space that I can go into and study. They provide snacks. There's different resources, tutoring, advice, and stuff like that they offer and stuff like that. And they, just providing study that just giving back to the students. And even, I was like you guys mentioned, like Emily mentioned, I was sometimes, I will stay away from it. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should stay on my transfer, but, having swag, shirts, I'm like, I wear my transfer. I'm like, I'm a transfer student, and I wear it and stuff like that, and I'm proud of it. And stuff like that. So just giving back to them, it might be a little extra funny here and there, but hey, sometimes that little pay cut from you guys might be needed to give back to the students in order for the institution to prosper in itself. So like I said, it's giving back to the students at the end of the day.
Okay. All right, who is next in the audience?
So you all talked about people that impacted each one of your journeys throughout your transfer process, but a lot of students don't have those people in their lives. So where do you all see maybe a missed opportunity within your journey or maybe someone else's journey that you think somebody could have impacted the transfer process or changed the outcome of a student's journey?
Jolynna?
So I would definitely say I was very blessed to have someone guiding me along the way. Dr. Frank Sarioni, the special guest that I brought along with me, he was someone who continuously reached out to make sure that I was given all the right resources, that I was on the right path, that I had everything together. But I can definitely see how some of my peers may not have had that same support at their community college before they transferred, because a lot of students nowadays, I would say, would not accept the help that is given to them unless it's almost directly handed to them. If they see something posted on Instagram, attend this to help review your college applications, I would say 90% of them will not be attending that Zoom. They will just maybe just keep to themselves, think that they have it okay, when in reality, it is really helpful. Because those types of Zooms were the things that got me on track. They helped me revise my essays, make sure that I had everything done correctly so that I had a seamless transfer process.
Is that another way of saying lots of swag will
Yes, lots of swag does help. That is definitely a pro as well.
Yes, just to answer your question, like I said, I was very naive, and sometimes some of us are just learn to just even accept the help that is there, and sometimes your job has to become harder for the scholars, to become students and be easier and to accept the help. And what I mean by that is sometimes you have to go out of your way to ensure that these students are gonna, get the resources that they need. And by what I mean by that is, like, I had this mentor, this advisor at EOPS, and he kept if I could go back and count those emails, it was about 100 emails, and I never responded to not one of them, to the point that he got my schedule, and he showed up to the front of my class, and he was like, "I've been looking for you. Why have you not been responding to my emails?" I'm like, "Who are you? Like, I just been getting these emails, but who are you?" He was like, "I'm here to help you." So, to the point that he literally grabbed me by the hand and just guided me the way. And sometimes you have to do that, and it might make your job harder, but at the same time, you're helping another student succeed in their goal. So if it's making your job harder, you're doing something right.
If anyone needs evidence to present to upper administrators who make staffing decisions, show them the recording of this, which will be available later on. What else?
Okay, so you just said, right, the resources that were available were useful to you. How do we get students to actually go to those?
Besides swag.
I drag my friends there. I literally drag my friends there. So when I transferred to the University of Utah, the reason I got so connected to the resources was because at the Solid Community College, I was part of the student government. And it wasn't until I was in a leadership position that I was told all these resources. And I was like, we have these? And I was like, students don't know this. Students don't know this. So as a student leader, I was like advocating for these resources, or not advocating for the resources, but putting them out there. Like, that was literally my job as a student leader, putting the resources out there. So when I got to the University of Utah, I was like, I know y'all have resources. I'm going to find them, but I do not know where. And I had a friend he's a freshman at the University of Utah, but he was also very involved with student government when he went to an interesting high school. It wasn't like a high school, it was like a college readiness. And so he and I literally walk around campus just looking for these resources, these events. And it's funny because my friends who went straight to the University of Utah after high school, so they're all juniors or are supposed to be juniors, they literally were not involved at all. And I got there and I was like, let's go here, let's go there. And my friends make fun of me because they're like, literally at CDU, drag us everywhere. But because of me, they're realizing that there's help out there. So it's interesting. I don't think I have a direct, clear answer for as a staff student or a staff's point of view of how I can put myself more out there besides the fact literally get in front of them. But maybe connecting with one student personally and telling them to invite students. Also food. We're college students. We're on a budget. If there's food, there's a higher possibility for someone to just stop by and actually just maybe for the food, but then, entice them.
So utilizing, and this has come up in a lot of sessions today, of course, or over the course of the week, utilizing transfer students to be connectors to transfer students.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to add really briefly. If you have a student working in your office who either is a transfer student or isn't, have them reach out to the students. Because the office that I work in, we've realized that if I'm the one who texts the new student and says, hey, I'm going to meet up at, this dining location tonight, I'd love to hang out with you. Phrase it like that, they'll come. And that's worked out for us.
And then also to add on, I would say to establish a strong and reputable reputation for your center. Because if I were to walk into my transfer center and no one's like greeting me, like I don't really understand what they do, I'm most likely not going to ever walk back in there again. But if I realize of like all the resources that they have, like all the help that they can give me, and I know that it actually has helped other students before, like I can see that like, oh, this student, like they were connected to like this job and like this scholarship and like this connection like from the transfer center, that I will obviously be like, wow, put me on that, like I want that too. So using other students to show the success of like what you have to offer other students, I would definitely say is a very beneficial way of utilizing the transfer center.
And just to kind of briefly just add to that, I will say, get to know them as a human being. Get to know their names. Because when I walk into our center and they're like, hey, also, hey, this, I'm like, yeah, like they know me. Like it feels comforting to know into a space that knows my name. So that's another thing that I learned to go to every professor stuff like that. I'm like, hey, this is who I am. Please recognize me by my name. And to go into a space, into a transfer center that everyone knows your name, oh man, that feeling feels so good. And it's gonna make me want to come there again. And then having the little trees and just even the little check, I'm like, how are you doing? How's school going? How's this? Doesn't everything have to be about academia? It can be like, how's life? How are you doing mentally? And just having those simple questions by Malcolm, you're so great. Because I just love you. It just having her doing all that and just the small things is what really matters.
Asking how are you, and I mean that, by the way, not like I'm passing you on the sidewalk.
We have one more question from the audience, and then we do want to get you to your next destination. But one more question from the audience, so we are watching time.
And it was a perfect segue, actually, because now navigating from academia to more of this sense of belonging and that social aspect, one thing that we're trying to do is start including transfer student in some of those first time year events, instead of having it be called like the first time student is the new student event. Were there any specific transfer events that you guys were able to go to during the transfer process? Any social events that you guys felt that were impactful to you guys actually wanting to go to that university? Do you think being included in those first year freshman events where you guys get to integrate and meet peers, or do you think it's more important to have a specific event that is specifically tailored for transfer students, even though sometimes we don't necessarily get the large population show up rate as we would the first time student event?
So I believed in that same thing. Like transfers need their own special like welcome week. So as the transfer student support commissioner at my institution, I created one myself. And so what we did was we had like week long, we booed like 2 of the days to just advertise it out to students. And then one of the days we had like an ice cream social where like surprisingly like a really good turnout of people came. And what you will learn about transfer students is that they want to meet other transfers and that they will talk to each other. Because there were many times throughout that event where like I was trying to get their attention, but everyone was so deep into conversation, which I loved. And that was really wonderful. And then we ended the week off with like a welcome mixer inside the building where the transfer center was, just to showcase that more. And students were able to meet other students, learn about what the transfer center had to offer. And I think that was just a good way to make it a little bit more special for transfer students, for them to know that they are like special, and they, even though they're a new student here at the institution, that like we care about them as well.
I think we have time for one more of you to chime in on that.
Sure. Yeah, we do what's called transfer connections. So because we have a super small population, when someone is choosing to transfer to the college, they get paired with essentially a transfer mentor, an upperclassman who has transferred, and we'll take them to dinner as a group, and then we'll do a little tour on campus. And then a few weeks later, we then do a larger dinner with like class deans and stuff. And that's like been something that I really enjoyed. It was something that I came in with as well.
Atziri, I guess we do have another minute. Unless you don't have anything. Okay. Also, do you have anything to add to that? It's okay if you don't.
No, I just lost my train of thought and stuff like that, but I guess we're good for right now.
Okay.
Everyone, can we get a round of applause for these amazing transfer student ambassadors?